One sentence appears everywhere online. Rosemary oil works just as well as minoxidil. You can find it in videos, blogs, product pages, and before and after posts. And unlike many internet myths, this claim did not appear from nowhere. It came from a real human clinical trial. In 2015, researchers compared a rosemary-based lotion with topical minoxidil in men with androgenetic alopecia. 6 months later, both groups had increased their hair counts, and the researchers reported no statistically significant difference between them. That sounds like a scientific victory for rosemary. But hidden inside that result are details that almost disappear online. The trial used a specific rosemary lotion, not every rosemary oil sold on the internet. It compared rosemary with one particular strength of minoxidil. It had no placebo group, and finding no significant difference does not automatically prove that two treatments are equal. So what did the study really show? Did rosemary genuinely match minoxidil, or did the internet turn a promising result into a conclusion the research never proved? But before we dive into the science, please subscribe to HairLab Explained if you want to understand hair loss through evidence, not myths. Now, let's begin. What the study actually tested. The trial included 100 men with androgenetic alopecia, commonly called male pattern hair loss. 50 received a rosemary-based lotion. The other 50 received topical minoxidil. Each man applied 1 milliliter of his assigned treatment twice daily for 6 months. Researchers assessed them at the beginning, after 3 months, and again after 6 months. That protocol already separates the study from most online rosemary routines. The participants were not applying a few drops whenever they remembered. They followed a defined schedule twice every day for half a year. And the rosemary treatment was not simply kitchen oil poured into a bottle. It was a prepared lotion containing a standardized amount of one of rosemary's major compounds. That matters because botanical products can vary. Climate, soil, extraction, storage, concentration, and the part of the plant used can all change the chemical profile. So the study did not test every rosemary serum, shampoo, essential oil, or homemade mixture. It tested one formulation used in one specific way. Then came the first surprise. After 3 months, neither group showed a significant increase in hair count. Not the rosemary group, and not the minoxidil group. This challenges claims that the study proved visible rosemary regrowth within only a few weeks. Hair growth is not like switching on a light. It is more like changing the direction of a large ship. The biological signal may begin first, but visible movement takes time. A follicle must enter a new growth phase, produce a strand, and allow it to become long enough to measure. That happens over months, not days. The 6-month result. At 6 months, the picture changed. Both groups showed a statistically significant increase in average hair count compared with their starting measurements. The rosemary group improved. The minoxidil group improved. And researchers found no statistically significant difference between them. Scalp itching increased in both groups, although it was reported more frequently with minoxidil. This is the result that made the paper famous. At first glance, the conclusion seems obvious. If both treatments increased hair count and the difference was not significant, rosemary must work just as well. But this is where statistics can create an illusion. Imagine 2 runners reaching the finish line while the camera is slightly blurred. The judges cannot confidently prove that one crossed first. Does that mean both runners had exactly the same time? No. It means the evidence was not precise enough to establish a reliable difference. The same can happen in a small clinical trial. With only 50 people in each group, natural variation can make treatments appear statistically similar even when their true effects are not identical. To prove that a new treatment is truly equivalent, researchers normally design a special trial. They define an acceptable difference in advance and calculate how many participants are needed to test it. This rosemary trial was not designed that way, so its conclusion is narrower. It showed that one rosemary lotion and the tested minoxidil treatment produced similar measured outcomes within this group over 6 months. It did not prove universal equality. And then we reach the detail that changes the entire comparison. The 2% detail. The rosemary lotion was not compared with 5% minoxidil. It was compared with 2% minoxidil. That distinction matters because minoxidil is not one single treatment strength. In men, 5% topical minoxidil has generally produced stronger results than 2%, although the stronger concentration can also cause more irritation. So when someone says, rosemary was proven to work as well as minoxidil, the correct question is, which minoxidil? In this study, the answer was 2%. Think of it like testing a new engine against the lower-powered version of another car. Matching that version does not prove the new engine matches every stronger model made by the same company. The study tells us nothing directly about whether rosemary matches 5% minoxidil foam or solution. Those products were not included. And minoxidil does not depend on one study. It has been examined in multiple trials, compared with placebo, tested at different strengths, reviewed across studies, and used clinically for decades. Rosemary has one famous direct comparison. Minoxidil has an evidence library. One encouraging study can open a door. It cannot replace the building behind it. Could rosemary really work? Limited evidence does not mean rosemary has no biological effect. Rosemary contains multiple active compounds. Researchers have proposed that some may influence local circulation, inflammation, oxidative stress, or the scalp environment. That is plausible. But improving scalp health and reversing androgenetic alopecia are not automatically the same thing. Pattern hair loss occurs because genetically sensitive follicles gradually miniaturize under androgen influence. Over time, each follicle produces a thinner, shorter strand until the hair becomes difficult to see. Think of the follicle as a factory slowly losing production capacity. Improving the road outside the factory may help deliveries arrive, but it does not necessarily repair the machinery inside. This brings us to another popular claim. Rosemary oil blocks DHT. That idea comes mainly from laboratory and animal research involving rosemary leaf extract. Researchers observed possible effects involving 5-alpha reductase or androgen-related signaling. That is interesting, but it is not the same as proving that ordinary rosemary essential oil lowers DHT inside the human scalp. The famous human trial did not measure scalp DHT, 5-alpha reductase activity, or long-term follicle miniaturization. It also did not compare rosemary with finasteride or another established anti-androgen treatment. A result in a laboratory model is like testing a key inside a practice lock. It tells researchers the key may fit a mechanism. It does not prove that the same key reaches the correct lock at the correct dose inside a living person. Minoxidil is not mainly a DHT blocker either. It acts as a growth stimulant through a more complex process, and people can respond differently depending partly on how effectively their scalp activates the drug. So this trial compared two possible growth-promoting topical treatments, one with extensive evidence and one with limited but promising evidence. The bottle problem. Now imagine someone buys the first rosemary bottle they find. They apply 3 drops mixed with another oil twice per week. 6 months later, nothing changes. Did the study fail? Not necessarily. The person may never have reproduced the treatment that was studied. The trial used a standardized lotion, a measured amount, twice daily application, and 6 months of consistency. A homemade mixture may have a different concentration, absorption, stability, and delivery vehicle. This is the hidden problem with the phrase natural treatment. A plant is not one standardized molecule. It is a chemical library. 2 bottles can carry the same plant name while delivering different compounds at different concentrations. Natural also does not mean risk-free. Rosemary can irritate the scalp or cause allergic contact dermatitis. Essential oils are concentrated substances and may be especially irritating when used incorrectly. Even in the famous trial, itching increased in both groups. So this is not a choice between a dangerous chemical and a harmless plant. Both can cause unwanted reactions. The difference is that minoxidil products are standardized around a known active ingredient and concentration, while rosemary products can vary dramatically. The real verdict. So, what did the study actually prove? It showed that one standardized rosemary lotion increased average hair counts after 6 months in men with androgenetic alopecia. It also showed that researchers did not detect a statistically significant difference between that lotion and 2% minoxidil within this relatively small trial. That is promising. But it is not the same as proving that rosemary oil is equal to all minoxidil treatments. The study was not a formal equivalence trial. It had a limited sample size, no placebo group, and did not test 5% minoxidil. It did not prove that rosemary lowers scalp DHT, and it did not prove that every rosemary product sold online can reproduce the result. The correct conclusion is more balanced. Rosemary is not fake. There is legitimate human evidence suggesting that one specific formulation may help. But rosemary is also not a scientifically proven replacement for minoxidil. Minoxidil remains the better established option because it is supported by a much larger body of clinical evidence. For someone already responding to minoxidil, this study is not a strong reason to abandon it. For someone who cannot tolerate minoxidil or strongly prefers a botanical option, a properly formulated rosemary product may be worth discussing with a dermatologist, with realistic expectations. But neither treatment necessarily solves the entire disease. Stimulating growth is not the same as stopping continued miniaturization. It is like fertilizing a tree while something beneath the soil continues damaging its roots. The leaves may improve, but the underlying problem may still be progressing. If you're looking for trusted hair loss products or personalized treatment options, you'll find carefully selected resources in the description below. The most important lesson is not that rosemary defeated minoxidil. It is that one small study asked a fascinating question, and the internet treated it as though it had already been permanently answered. Rosemary did not win the scientific debate. It earned the right to be studied again, because every answer leads to another question. In our next video, we will uncover whether natural DHT blockers such as saw palmetto, pumpkin seed oil, caffeine, and rosemary can actually slow pattern hair loss, or whether they only create the appearance of a healthier scalp. The answer might completely change the way you think about natural hair loss treatments. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe to HairLab Explained. I'll see you in the next video.